Hi, I'm Larry Magid, CEO of ConnectSafely.org, the U.S. host of Safer Internet Day. And I'm joined today by two people. One is our education director, Kerry Gallagher, and another is our guest, Casey Boyd, who is a librarian at the Jefferson Academy in Washington, D.C., and a veteran school librarian. So Casey, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite, Larry and Kerry.
It's really great to have you, and I'm a big fan of librarians. In fact, I've learned a lot about librarians because I've actually spoken a couple of times at the Internet Librarian Association. They have an annual conference. And through that, I've learned that librarians are actually more important than ever, which is somewhat counterintuitive because you might think with the internet, do we really need librarians? Do we even need reference librarians? Because after all, we have Google. So talk to me a little bit about your work and sort of the role of librarians in the modern age.
Well, I've been working as a school librarian for the last 23 years. This is my third school district, and I've worked in the K through 12th grade environment, as well as I've worked in administration for school libraries in two school districts. So I've done a little bit of everything, so to say. Librarians are very important, especially during our digital times that we are experiencing right now, because our students need as much guidance as they can receive and how they can navigate information and most importantly, information technology. I currently teach a seventh grade media studies class, and one of the things that we talk about a lot is how important it is for the students to use the tools that are taught in class and how to navigate and evaluate information that's presented to them. So I know that oftentimes librarians, especially school librarians, are kind of viewed as, oh, you're just checking out books, that's all you're doing. We have a very deep and very vast skill set that can be used across the curriculum. I don't go into my coworkers' classrooms and take over. My job is there to support and to provide as much support, whether it be print or digital, into making those lessons that are presented in class more meaningful and much more easy for the kids to, digest and really dive deep into in terms of understanding and enjoying. So I think I have a very important role, in the K-12 school system. It's just that the thing is that we have to be utilized properly by our building administrators and our district administrator.
When I was in school, of course, we didn't have the internet, and to get information, you literally had to go to a library, and you might even, I lived and grew up in Los Angeles, I might, in some cases, had to go downtown to the big library because my local library and my school library didn't have the depth of information that we sometimes needed. And now, of course, we have a fire hose of information. And I'm wondering whether that actually is even more of a challenge. In other words, the old days, we had a dearth of information. Now we have so much information. Does that actually pose an additional need for an expert like yourself to help people find and interpret what's meaningful versus all the nonsense that's out there?
We are needed in that respect because kids don't know how to navigate this information. They can read something online and they take it as true. And we have to help them evaluate that information that's presented to them.
Well, and we're so grateful, Casey, that someone with your experience and skill set are serving the children of the DC area. But what our audience may not know is that you're really a national leader when it comes to advocating for libraries and what they do for school communities and the broader community. In fact, on your website, you call yourself a school library activist, which, as someone who follows you on social media and follows your work, I can confirm it's true. But can you explain to our audience what that actually means to be a school library activist?
Actually, someone had to make me understand that I was a school library activist. It took a while for that to sink in, and I started to see that actually Dr. Moore was correct when she said that about me. I am an advocate for school libraries. I love libraries. I really try and promote the beauty of our library programs throughout this country, whether it be in my district or in other school districts. But to be an activist is taking the bull by the horns, so to say. Right now, in certain districts, in certain parts of the country, we are experiencing a decline in staffing. And instead of idly standing by and not saying anything, I made the choice about 3 years ago to start really just amplifying my voice and showing people by example, this is what I do, this is what I bring to the curriculum, this is what I bring to the learning community, this is how I service kids, you know, and really speaking up, not just with our parents, but also our community stakeholders, our politicians, our state board of ed representatives, you name it. I've even dealt with the mayor in Chicago at one point, as well as the superintendent, you know, just really getting in their face and saying that, you know, school library programs are here, we are needed, we should be valued, and we should be respected, most importantly.
I 100% agree. I don't know what we would do without our incredible librarians at the school where I work personally. So, in addition to your work as an activist for furthering libraries in general, and especially school libraries, you're really a leader when it comes to social justice and racial justice in education. In particular, I've seen you active in the Black Librarians online community. And as you know, we're connected as educators online. There's a lot of educators who are online and are learning to use their voices to further the causes they care for. So how can the educators who are listening to this find your work and those movements, and how can they join to really make a difference themselves as well?
Well, they have to be, first of all, committed to doing the work. Yes, after the tragic deaths of Trayvon Martin, all the way through of recent Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and George Floyd, within the Black community, there have been a lot of tragedies that have taken place, and many librarians, because we are community people, we decided that we were going to speak up and we were going to really help support the movement, the advocacy in this area of talking about the injustices that take place in our communities. And these are just the big names that we hear about because they've hit the national level. You know, there are things that are taking place in our own smaller communities that are just as, and if more, even more horrific, that don't get that attention. And with librarians, we are grassroots activists. We believe in amplifying, we believe in speaking up, bringing attention, and also rallying up the troops sometime. So how can you get involved? You can follow certain websites, you can follow certain hashtags. There's a lot that are out there. First thing you can do if you are a librarian is that you can follow the Black Caucus of the American Library Association. We do a lot of work in this area dealing with social justice and racial issues that are taking place within the African American community. I can also name a zillion more national organizations as well, but if we're going to stick strictly with librarians, on Instagram, there is a very strong group, and it's called the Black Librarians Group on Instagram. It's run by Shannon Bland, a librarian out of Maryland. Also, too, online, there's We're Here. It's another advocacy group, and it's of people of color, along with their allies that are very serious about doing the work and serious about advocating and supporting the work that's being done. So there's a lot of different areas that you can get involved. I strongly suggest that you take the time and do the reading, not just the surface reading, but the deep dive reading. And if you want to be a true ally, sometimes it takes for you to just be quiet and listen, you know, and listen intently and believe when someone is explaining that they have experienced a injustice. Believe them. Don't question or don't deny or think that they're just kind of just speaking to the camera. No, these tragedies that have occurred in some in people's lives, they're very serious. I've had them happen to me, and the last thing you want is someone to be critical or not believe what you're saying. So yes, there's a lot of opportunities for growth, personal growth, and also to support. And I suggest that everyone just get on board and just get to the point of listening to one another and trying to understand, you know, what people are going through and other people's experiences through their lens.
Yeah, I'm really
So
glad
hopefully I answered that question for you.
I think you did a great job answering that. And I'm really glad you raised the issue of the local situations. My wife is a human relations commissioner here in Palo Alto, California. And there was appropriately a huge reaction to the whole George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and other tragedies that took place thousands of miles from here, yet too little focus on issues that have happened right here in Palo Alto with our own police department, our own community. So there really needs to be a local focus, because that's what we can do something about here, in addition to being supportive of struggles in other parts of the country. I want to switch gears for a moment and go back to some of the things that you were saying earlier. And also, in your bio, you talked about how you really are an advocate for leisurely reading among teens and children, including young children. And I'm curious, when you think about the various ways that we can obtain information now, we've got video, of course, we have ebooks, we have audiobooks, we have these storytelling machines or apps for our tablets. I wonder if you could talk about those different media and what's appropriate when, and sort of how they all kind of come together, and what still works.
I think what a person would need to do if they're an educator, especially, is that they need to take a temperature check. I know I'll use my students in my media class as an example. I have some visual learners, and then I have some auditory learners, and I have some very tactile learners. And you have to see what type of learning style of student or the receiver you're dealing with. And then the other thing is that looking at backgrounds culturally. I never want to offend any of my students. So I'm very careful about the material that I select for my students, because some of them have religious backgrounds and cultural backgrounds that are unlike myself. So I always keep that in mind when I'm going through the selection of material. And then it's also the delivery. The delivery is that, am I delivering this content to the students in a biased or unbiased manner? Am I being respectful of others in there? And then last but not least is that I want to make sure that whatever material is being presented to the kids, it will spark discussion, healthy discussion. And so all this material, it can be presented to the kids through video. My students love Now This, which is a really nice video diary magazine that's produced, and it's very much so real time. They love Newslia. There's the Newslit Project is another one. Common Sense Media. It goes on and on and on, but it also depends on the topic in terms of what the kids are interested in, or the issue that's going on, for the day. And sometimes I just have them read a simple article.
Great.
Casey, the way that you and I met was a few months ago. We were on a panel together, and we were both panelists. And the topic was the sort of elevated need for digital citizenship and media literacy under these pandemic circumstances, in terms of areas or themes that are embedded into teaching and learning for all educators. So for administrators, need to have it on their radar, curriculum directors, librarians, and classroom teachers. So, from my experience with you there, I can safely say that you definitely share a passion for these skills like I do. What are your thoughts on what educators can do? Like what tips can you share with our educator audience today about what they can do right now to embed this into what they're doing when they're teaching, whether they're teaching virtually or in person?
It's so important, because I feel like 90% when we're in person, 90% of the problems that the kids, especially middle school, have one another, it started somewhere online. And if we teach kids the basic skills, the basic tools in terms of how to navigate these sites, how they are to behave while they're online, how they're to be courteous with one another. I always say to the kids, you might think this is lame, but it doesn't cost nothing to be kind. Talking about kindness, talking about how we should be respectful of other views online. I really think that that's where we can really correct a lot of problems that we see with kids and their behavior online. Because some of them, as I tell my students, you all can be pretty vicious with one another. But if educators were to take the time out to actually teach lessons that are brought to them by various companies that specialize in this area, it would make a huge difference. My district does this at the beginning of the year. We have to do a level of digital citizenship, digital literacy related activities, to start the year off. Personally, I believe that this is a ongoing um, lesson that should be taught each quarter,
I
but it's hard to get those lessons in, and with the instruction and testing and so on, it's difficult. It's very difficult, but it really does need to be done because it can help with improve the culture of your school.
I agree, and I think it's the foundation of every lesson, right? So one of the things that Larry and I were talking about recently is, the term digital citizenship has been around for a while, but we've been talking about transitioning to this term digital wellness, because now that we're in the midst of a pandemic, all of us are relying on our devices more than we ever have before, not just to do school, but work, to maintain relationships, to socialize, all of those things. And I think, like you mentioned, creating that foundation, educators have a role in creating that foundation of taking care of yourself by taking care of how you filter information and how you use information.
I would love to engage much more with my students right now in virtual, but I know it's just not going to happen because they're already inundated with the general coursework that they're enrolled in. But what can I do as a librarian? I can identify activities, whether they be online or offline, that students can perform individually or even with friends or family that can help with that mental wellness and just to help them kind of take a step back from everything. Um, Two things I could talk about off the bat, which is the Calm Act. I think that that's a wonderful application. They've made it free for educators, and it does help kids just kind of calm down and de-stress a little bit, and we need more types of access to those type of applications to help kids, because I am quite concerned. I have students that are not doing very well emotionally or mentally. This pandemic has taken a huge toll on them, and sometimes just having a simple interaction, or like today I had a student that said, I want to see you. I was a little late with turning my camera on, and he said it very quickly, Miss Boyd, I really want to see you today. I'm like, wow, you really can't pass up what he's saying in a very okay, I'll just turn my camera on. No, there's a deeper meaning behind it. This child is not getting a lot of interaction with others, and we have to, as educators, be mindful of it and respond to it quickly, because we never know what we're dealing with. The kids are online a lot, but we can also create fun activities. And there's a librarian out of Louisiana named Amanda Jones that does a really nice job with these virtual field trips that are a lot of fun for kids. So sometimes, yeah, we do keep the kids online, but let's be real creative and find something fun and engaging for them to get into, to kind of take their mind off of things. I'm sorry, I had to throw that in. That was a real good one.
My daughter's a kindergarten teacher, and she's taken her kids to zoos and other places, and it's actually worked better than I would have expected.
Yeah, exactly. It just takes a minute for us as educators to kind of sit back and say, okay, how can I make this more engaging, fun, and have the kids kind of de-stress and not think about what they're going through in their personal circumstances. It's tough. It's tough for these kids.
I'm really glad you brought up that example, because that's a perfect segue to my next question, which is about how educators are really going above and beyond and getting creative to connect with their students. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to do a little bragging here, because you recently created a DonorsChoose project that was very quickly fully funded. And I think it's like a fantastic project. I wanted to give you an opportunity to toot your own horn, describe it, and how it's going to help you connect with the students that you serve.
Oh, sure. I was surprised. I got funded within 2 days. Yay.
Yeah.
I was excited about that. I wrote my very first DonorsChoose grant. Just, I have a good friend that's has written a lot of them, and she's like, you could do this, and I finally did it. It's called I Read, We Proceed Together. And the goal is that I don't want to focus on, like, it's Black History Month coming up in February, but more so that the topics of anti-racism and social justice are very much so hot button topics in our society, and kids still have some difficulty navigating and understanding this. And so what I wanted to do was provide them with books that they could keep in their personal libraries. So these are books that they're going to receive from me through DonorsChoose. They get to keep them, for crying out loud, as a reference tool. And they can hold on to them, because when kids love books, they don't want to send them back to the library. They just don't, and I experience this all the time as a school librarian. So anyway, we want them to hold on to those books, have them be like a starter to help build their personal library collections at home. And then the other end of it is, we have a pride club at my school. And many of my students are learning about themselves, they're self-identifying. Well, how about having literature that supports their curiosity, their misunderstanding, or maybe give them the voice and also the inspiration that they need to stand up, for themselves, or even with their friends or family in some cases, as they navigate these uncharted waters that they're not familiar with. So I want them to have these books as a reference tool that they can always rely back on. And so that's what the major goal is that putting the books physically in the kids' hands, and it becomes theirs to keep.
Casey Boyd, I really want to thank you for your passion, your knowledge, and sharing that with us. You're the kind of librarian I wish I had when I was in school, and I'm grateful that at least the students of Washington, D.C. have someone as great as you do, and as Kerry pointed out, that you provided a lot of leadership nationally as well. Thank you so much for joining us, and Kerry, of course, thank you for being such an important part of this discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. I enjoyed myself today.